So I had this plan, and we're not going to look. I had this plan, I had this idea of what this show was going to be and whatnot. You know, you and I, we've been doing this every quarter for the last, since the big change, the beginning of last year. You know, we started, the February of 2025 and stuff like this. We've still got that show, and we're still going to do a bunch of that show, but we just put 482. We just put 482 out yesterday. I've got you. We're live.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, it started with an attempt at a bug fix a month ago. So with this 4.8 release and the way we've been doing patches this year, we have 2 streams when we work off from the working set. We have a base stream that we use for the base release, so 4.0, and we have a hotfix stream where we bring all the continuous changes along. So there was an attempt at bug fixing something on the Idris that was actually creating some performance issue somewhere else that was checked into that stream, and nobody saw it, and it went through. So we've been on the hotfix stream now for 4.8.1, now going to 4.8.2. In 4.8.2, we went back to the base stream, which are supposed to be at parity at this point, except additional content, because we've added additional content in the patch. That change was included. And so what's supposed to be a routine update became a massive, wide-sprawling issue because basically the Idris was no longer compatible with its persisted copy. And so what that would do is players have in their ASOP terminal, they have a version of the Idris that's from 4.8.1. This change, which was not supposed to be in the stream at all, gets in there. And so now the game server is expecting another shape for this. The game server has a series of checks and balances for this, but he's the last banker in the chain. And so for him, if the schema is incompatible, he's like, there's data corruption risk, I'm out. And so...
Who's he in this analogy?
he's the game server,
okay.
Basically, right? So the game server is trying to spawn the Idris, wherever it is, right? So that's called the async spawn chain. And so as he's trying to resolve the object containers for this and to materialize the ship in game, he comes around an incompatibility. And then there's a hard check for this, because if we let those through, if we disarm this check, for example, then the game server might corrupt ships or might be twisting data, and then we would go wider than that. And so the game server would crash. So
there's all this. So there's all this stuff that we have to work on and fix.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff that we are working on and fixing. And yesterday, in a patch that was just supposed to add, the 2 new, GATAC ships and some hot fixes to some of the more persistent
bring back
issues.
the odd fixes from the odd fix branch and move forward.
Completely unrelated check into the Idris.
Yes.
Somehow made it through validation. Or missed validation.
Correct.
It's like this. Got in, and now the server, which is still built, the persistence records, which are still built on 4.8.1, and expecting a 4.8.1 version of the ship.
Also 4.8.0.
4.8.0.
They're compatible.
Really? Okay. So it's expecting a 4.8.0 version of the ship. Got a 4.8.2 version of the ship without knowing that there was supposed to be a difference, and just went, all right, I'm gonna head out.
That's right.
You did the SpongeBob meme.
Yeah, and so every time an Idris would be attempted to spawn, that server in that region would crash, and then restart, and then try to load the Idris again, and then crash again. And so as players were unstowing more Idrises and more shards, more servers got affected, until you reach a point where now the ops team is in the background, and they're like lighting all the fires, like the Rohan.
You were
calling the Rohan.
I saw you online at like 3:30 this morning.
Yeah. And so we're looking at this, and basically we start cordoning off shards, because at the beginning we're not sure what the issue is. So we start cordoning off shards, and what happens in this case is like the more shards are getting offline, the less capacity we have for players that are either entering the game or shard hopping. We have a lot of people shard hopping, and so what happens is they hit the dreaded 60,012 error, which means, hey, there's no capacity in your zone. There is capacity, but we've had to restrict it in the meantime. And so we took a hard decision later in the night to prevent players from spawning Idrises temporarily, just to kind of stop breaking other shards. We brought more shards online to keep that playing. And then we basically went through and manually rectified. That's what we call percussive maintenance. When you see that in the status, it means we went in and we did a drastic measure to basically fix the Idrises that were either spawned in shards or still left in inventories to make sure that they had the proper schema. And so now we know that all the Idrises are fine. We've lifted that temporary stoppage for that ship. And so now we're back. That's what happened.
Completely out of left field. Absolutely unrelated to all the stuff that we're working on, the stuff that the patch was supposed to be and whatnot. This is
Cabret trays being spawned by some subcomponent in the Idris cargo room.
And it's not even anything specific. In this case, it's the Idris, but it's not because it's a capital ship or anything. It's just...
it could have been any ship in that case. So normally there's a check-in discipline that we apply, especially this year, because we have a different publishing model this year. And so ships that have been distributed already in a given major, minor patch cannot be modified. Now, for some reason, this check-in passed all the validation check and ended up in the build.
This is... We're gonna get to the show proper, guys. With what happened last night and Benoit up until all hours of the night, to say this is frustrating is
Understatement.
An understatement. I'm gonna give you some time. We're gonna get into the show proper, and then I'm gonna come back at some point about why is this happening and whatnot. It's if I've got you here, I've got you guys here. We have to get into it. We have to get into it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and get started with the show. Hi, everybody. It's a very weird start to the show. I'm Jared. I'm the content director for Cloud Imperium Games, Proper Space Industries, and the host of Star Citizen Live, which is the show that you're watching right now. Approximately every quarter for the last year and a half, we have a show where we have a scheduled show where we have our chief technical.
Your pick.
Well, I'm way off the whole script today.
Yeah.
The chief technical officer, Benoit, on the show to discuss what is essentially the current technical state of the game. Now, I want to be real clear. This is about the technical state of the game. Design issues or content issues or whatnot, not the realm of the people that we have on today. Joining us on the show today, because we kept threatening to do it, and we wanted him last time and whatnot, and it's like he made the mistake of promising, I'll be on the next one, is our director of programming, gameplay programming, gameplay engineering, gameplay programming, Jens.
Both are violent.
Both at the moment. And we're here to talk about 4.8, 4.8.1, 4.8.2, like this, the current technical state of the game. Now, 4.8 at this point went out about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
About 4 weeks ago. There was a lot of really great stuff. Before we just had a couple unscripted minutes about some bad stuff, and we're going to get to more challenging stuff in a minute. Let's talk a little bit about how 4.8 did. I saw there was a lot of commentary online that 4.8 was as bad as 3.18 and whatnot. We don't need to rehash 3.18 whatnot. Most people watching the show knows 3.18 at this point. Was it really as bad as 3.18?
No.
Or talk to me about what's your take on how 4.8 went?
Well, for me, if I take from the machine room side of things, we've been firefighting since we launched 4.8. I mean, from a whole slew of different issues. Some of them are to be expected when we launch a patch that has this many amount of core changes. Like 4.8 has, we've touched on systems that are really central to the traversal again. So we're talking about the entitlement system, which has not changed in years at this point, and we've completely overhauled the entitlement system in 4.8 to power, in part, the item imprint system, but more importantly, to pull the entitlements out of the patch cycle and persist them across patches. So what we call the LTP layer is not just what you have in your inventory, it's also what you own. Your ships and all of the items that you purchase in game now have an entitlement record that holds the insurance loadouts for it, all of the customizations that you make out of it, and that's hosted outside the game, not outside the game, but outside the game patch, which means that when we come back from a patch, there's no risk of, oh, I'm not getting my ship back, right? What you see in ASOP in the first patch will be exactly the same data source in the second patch, and so that risk of like losing ships across is completely gone. And so we're very happy. In fact, that bit actually went very well in 4.8, even though up to the launch, it was, there's always last minute things to look at. But we have been firefighting across a multitude of different issues that were tangential to that. Some of them we can touch on a little bit because I've made some notes to talk about gameplay systems here and why they were affected by some minor infrastructure issues that turned out to be massively contributing to the perception of the patch. So I'll talk a bit about that in a bit, but basically, we've been firefighting since 4.8.0. I want to touch on one thing because we just had a one off the cuff moment about the Idris last night, right? But 2 weeks prior to that, we had another downtime patch that needed a lot of rectification. So the people that the teams that run the online group were hard at work on this maintenance, and unfortunately, another one of those unwanted check-ins came in during that 4.8.1 cycle, where in an attempt to fix the VGL flight suits that was missing hands and feet, another check-in came in that removed subcomponents of this flight suits, but not just removed them from the flight suit, deleted them from existence from the game, and that's not something that you can do in a minor patch. And so clearly that's two instances in this patch where changes and check-ins should have been validated and prevented and went in, and then after that became an infrastructure problem, because same issue here, if somebody was wearing the VGL flight suit and referred to these entity classes that were actually representing, I think, the nozzle and the front pack of the suit, then the game server would crash. And so we had, again, to do percussive maintenance to remove those items and fix that. And so that highlights to me a massive issue with how we validate check-ins and how we get changes in the game across persistence until we have full forward porting compatibility on the persistence layer, which we don't have at the moment.
But will be a game changer.
Yes.
What's your perspective, Ian? I'm keen. It's
Well, it's live service. You're always running, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're always running. Like we're talking about forward patching. If we'd been behind closed doors, you would have done that, right? No one would ever seen the game until you've done that piece of technology. But that's not who we are. We're always running, and that's what makes it really, really exciting to work here as well, right? Because we're putting ourselves out there all the time. But if I look at this specific case, you're saying like, right, we have checks and we have contracts on what you can and can't do in these substreams that we've already released, where the data management is super, super strict. And obviously now we invalidating them twice in a row, so it's time to look at like how do we really add that extra layer of protection.
Why is this happening? Why? Look, it's I know I have to be. I'm allowed a lot of latitude here. I'm allowed a lot of latitude here, and I appreciate it from the people that I work for. But this is really frustrating.
Yeah.
How is it? I understand that, you know, Rich Tyler, our senior game director, went on stage at CitizenCon, you know, 2 years ago, and laid out the roadmap to 1.0. And I understand that through 25 and through the first half of 2026, we have made some legitimately ridiculous strides towards making this game actually the MMO it was always trying to be. You know, if people who followed this project 2015, 2016, 2017, a lot of you know, the years before, you know, it's very easy. It was very easy to have questions like, where are they going? Like where are they going? Why is this like that? Why is that like that? It's like we would often see questions. Has anybody ever played an MMO before? Do they know how to do this? It's like this, and there's a reason. There's a reason we made a major pivot. We made a major pivot at the end of 2024. In 2025, we went into this content mode, and we said no new features. No new features. We're going to focus on content while we shore up all these things. And when I was you and me sitting here more than a year ago, it's like this. And in the last year and a half, we have tripled the amount of content that we've put out compared to 2024, compared to 2023, 2022, all combined. Like the amount of content we have put out in the last 18 months is amazing. And the people here are working their asses off to make it as good as possible. I don't doubt the intentions of any human being here. I don't doubt the dedication of anybody here. We're not here today to apologize for anything. I know that we're all working as hard, well, except Steve. We're all working as hard as possible. But why does this happen? Why is this happening? I can't sit here and do this job and feel good about my job without asking you outright, why is this happening? If everybody is working as hard as I know they are, and everybody is working as dedicated as they are, and everybody is as talented as I know they are, why does something like this still happen? Why has it happened twice in the last 2 weeks?
Note how you pointed to me when you're talented, not you.
I know, right? I think there's a part of that which is that we're transforming the game. We're still transforming the game into an MMO, right? We're still in the process of taking a game that used to run on a single server and now obviously a server mesh, which that's working, but the game systems need to expand as well. And if you add the content pressure on top of that, right, of getting content into the game, releasing it at the same time, stabilizing it, hardening it, and features that come in and do the inverse. New features come in and they destabilize the systems. Without stronger guardrails that also need to evolve with this, that's where we ended up. And so I think that, to be honest, I think at this right now, we're outpacing our ability of verifying everything that's being added to the game. And this is where we need to put a lot of our energy at the moment, is to put in those guardrails so that, you know, the check-in that would cause this crash issue, right? Those are identified at this point. And so it's all about adding these validation frameworks to prevent that from happening and keeping the data stable and fully validated. Now, that sounds, well, why didn't you do that before, right?
You're not saying that there were no guardrails in place.
No. There are guardrails in place, but
they're not keeping up with the pace.
Correct. Yes, exactly. Like we create more content and more features than we have time to add guardrails in to prevent these cases, right? An example I could give on something unrelated to persistence, right? But you know, we're at the point now. We used to we make a weapon, we make a ship, that's it, right? Now we have a team making weapons. They balance the weapons. They design the weapons. They work in that realm. They have guardrails in there, right? They know what to check for, outliers, data sets, you know, how power is distributed, etc. You go to the next team. The next team is making ship components. They have their guardrails, they have their approaches, they have their things, right? They balance it out. You have another team that's making recipes and dismantling, right? They have their own guardrails, their own systems. You have another team that's making economy. They add those things to shops. They add pricing. They make sure that that's balanced, and then they move on to another team that's adding this content to loot boxes, right? Now we didn't have that a while ago, right? And then mission rewards added in there. All of these have validation, but there's no holistic validation across, right? We're at the point now where all these systems communicate with each other all the time, right? And crafting has changed the game quite a bit on that area, right? And so that translates into more weapons being created, more content being created, more missions giving more rewards, and all these things need to be validated together, not in silos.
Is this why in 4.8 there was the thing where there was a weapon? I think it was a ship weapon. I can't remember specifically, but you paid 20,000. I'm pulling a number out of my butt here.
Sure.
You paid 20,000 to buy this ship weapon, but then you dismantled it and you got like $80,000 worth of materials. And
that
so
you could sell in one area.
that you can send. So people were just buying the vendor thing and doing
Right.
it. And you're saying that's because the weapon and the price and the pricing and everything for the weapon was validated by one team in one silo, if
Correct.
you will.
Yes.
And then the validation of the crafting and the breakdown and stuff was done in a different one.
Sure.
And there wasn't something that
Transversal to check all of that, and also like we're definitely now post 4.7 in a realm where just human validation is not enough, right? And so a lot of game design data is typically, managed by the team, but I think that we're way past that, and we need machine validation for everything because the rate at which we build it and the amount of technology we're putting in is just too fast for validation to keep up.
okay.
And we can't just rely on endpoint validation. Because in this case, it was machine validation that caused the error
Yes.
and stopped it from corruption.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like
But
the
it's
machine
at the endpoint,
validation
it's
had
too
a
late,
correct. Yes, exactly.
so had to come earlier.
So for validation, let's just stay on this topic here for a bit. It's people are going to, as talented as everybody is, as skilled as everybody is, and stuff like this. Mistakes are going to be made, and the wrong thing is going to be checked in, and stuff like this. And the game is growing at a scale. Like I've been here for more than a decade and stuff. I know it's a Jared meme drink anytime I talk about how long I've been here. You can just see it in my hair now. Weird. I am so incredibly proud of the game right now. It's the last 18 months have hands down been the best 18 months that this game has had since the PU went online in 2015. And anybody that says otherwise is being disingenuous. They just are. I'm being hard with you guys here. I'm going to be a little harder. I'm being hard with you guys as well. It's like the last 18 months have been phenomenal for the progression of Star Citizen. It's our daily average users are up. Our concurrency is up. The content is the best content we've ever put out. TSG is finally realizing we finally have coordinated space combat in our space combat game. Is this just it is? But it sounds like we're moving fast. We're moving fast and we're doing a lot. You said the guardrails aren't catching up. How do we? I get machine validation. I get you got to build some stuff. Is that all we can do? Is that make me feel better about how we're going to fix this? Is what I'm asking. Because if I feel better about how we're going to fix this, maybe there's a reason for people watching to feel better about how we're going to fix it.
Sure.
It's just the validation issue.
Sure. So it's a problem we've known about, right? And that we've been trying to solve, right? And so more recently, there's more changes that have been coming from the engine side to give us a framework for validation. When I say framework for validation is that game designers can participate in this, right? It's not like, oh, they need to hand it off to an engineer, and the engineer is busy and he can't do the work, and now the validation is not added, which is the mode that we've been in the past, right? And so we've been in the process of building a validation framework for all game systems and all pieces of data stored in the game that can do queries across all data, whether it's, hey, I have a mission in this location that requires this, that pays out this. Is that an outlier compared to, you know? And so being able to do cross data queries across the entire game, which is not something we've had before, which allows us then to just express these checks, find outliers into like mission payouts, find outliers into how, you know, if we go back to the example of the gun is for sale at this location at this price, it's dismantleable into these components that can be sold at this location, that exchange value is too high, right? And so creating these validations will become part of the design work completely with this framework, which will allow us to have all these guardrails. On top of that, we've got the more technical validation, right? So the two issues we got in 4.8 related to modifying ships that were already distributed in the main patch and removing entity classes, for example. Both of those things already have lock checks right now. That's the first thing we did when we discovered them. But we're going to keep adding more of those compatibility check. Now, 4.8 also has the beginning of database patching. So in 4.7, we didn't have the full ability to persist all the crafting properties on weapons. So if you crafted a weapons, all the modifiers were not necessarily going to persist through LTP, right? In 4.8, we have introduced in the back end patchable serialized variables. We didn't talk about it much because it's kind of mixed into the crafting system, but basically we now, in the schema of a component, which stores the data for something, let's say it's a weapon, right? And I have the modifiers for it, let's say elongated nozzle, faster damage rate, whatever. These values, we now know which one of those values is patchable, right? And then we're able this way to persist them and patch them in the next release. We also determine which ones we store when you stow it. We don't stow all variables, which used to be the case. And that's the foundation for us to keep working at what we really want to achieve, which is a forward patchable data set. So that now these, even if you know, the ship team goes in, changes all the serialized variables for a ship and rejigs the whole object container layout for a ship, that will be able to live migrate your ship to the new version without crashing the game servers in the meantime. So basically embracing this movable data set. But that's tricky to do. Obviously, we've been at this for a long time, but 4.8 has the beginning of that for crafting properties.
Right. That's great for allowing us to better manage when somebody checks something in that they didn't do. But I'm talking about what are we doing to stop the check-ins that aren't supposed to happen?
Sure. Like
through validation. I want to.
Well, it's pre-validation, right? The one I call this validation framework I'm talking about is pre-check-in.
Okay.
Right. It's something that I'm working on the game. I'm going to add a new gun and I'm going to price it this and I'm going to make it super powerful, right? Well, that would flag.
Exactly.
I could not. Yeah. I could not check that in, right? The system would go, wait, you need some authorization before you can check this in because of these reasons. Which currently we don't have something like this. That's cross-checking, right? Obviously in each silo, yes, but not within.
Is this something I have to ask you the one question here. Is this something that we're talking about that's a 2027 thing? Are there parts of this at least that can go in? Is there hope for this?
Yes.
Sooner rather than later?
We need this yesterday. Like,
I'm aware we need it yesterday. But
no, we're working on this right now. Like, to get all these checks and balances in place. Like, I don't know if it will be like a 4.9 kind of thing, but it's happening now.
Okay.
Because everybody around the table knows now. Like, it's clear from the 4.8 experience that machine validation is required across the board.
So why isn't this just? Let's tackle this from another angle. Why isn't just throwing more QA at this the answer? Why isn't this just hire 500 more QA people, and this gets fixed? I suspect you probably have an answer for this.
You know, I mean, in this case, it took the situation of like the data, how the database on 48481 was, and with the new data from 482 to create the situation. And that's not something that the QA environment has. So whatever we do, we as a technology group would have to come in and at least give them that. And then if you put your 500 QA on it, then they would probably, one of them would have spawned an IDRIS. But without that environment, you could put as many as you like on it. No one would ever have discovered this situation. This is just too far removed. And I think that's so come back to the large data set, right? As you have a large data set, you just can't scale in manpower alone. You need something that scales way beyond that.
And I suppose if you just hired 500 QA people, that doesn't mean there's 500 requisite programmers that can all take the stuff and fix it either.
No, I think they would meet some frustration with their output and our ability to tackle it would certainly create a separate set of challenges.
But also, what's frustrating with this situation is that we've done multiple patches where this just worked fine.
Oh yeah, we've been on this. We've been putting out a new piece of content every 2 weeks since the beginning of this year. Last year we moved. For 2024 and before, we were on a schedule of one patch every 3 months, and we didn't. I think we actually hit every 3 months once in the 5 years that we were on that cadence. From 3.0 to 4.8. I can't remember which one was January last year. We were trying to do a patch every quarter, and we actually hit the quarter date maybe 1 or 2 times in all that time. But so it was 4 patches a year at most, basically, is what we were doing. And then in 2025, we, as part of this major initiative, we switched and we went 11 patches. Yeah. We went 11 patches in 2024. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record. The content that was in those patches is some of the stuff I'm most proud of that their team here has ever put out. But we were able to do that because we pulled back on features. We pulled back on features, and it was content team. There were a couple features here and there that would sneak in and whatnot because we need this for that and the other thing. But for the most part, it was all content. In 2026, we now switched to, and anybody that's been really paying attention or following the development would see this already. We've switched to a bi-monthly patch where we put out a major patch every 2 months, and we do these 2-week content drops in between. So every 2 weeks, there's a certain thing gets turned on. People who have been in PT, who have been testing, they tested this aspect, and then it wasn't there in the patch, and it goes, because it gets turned on 2 weeks. It gets turned on 2 weeks after that. It gets turned, and that was to help with engagement throughout the year, to give people more things to do, to keep people more interested. It's one of those things that you do when you're running a MMO. And that's been great up until the last 4 weeks. Yeah. That's worked.
Yeah.
And so it's, I don't want to harp on this. I don't know how much of this is my own personal, I'm stuck on it, or whether this is what I'm supposed to be doing with the show. But it seems like we know what we have to do.
We have to solve the process for sure.
We have to solve the process. We have to solve the process. We have to build more tools. We have to scale our validation to match the rate of content that we're doing.
And the complexity of content too.
Right, because this year we also turned on features. We turned on the feature spigot this year after pulling back on it in 2025. I think I can't tell if I've been messing up my years this whole time. All right, how confident do you feel? How confident do you feel that you've got a handle on this?
I think we know what we have to do. I think it's going to take a while to get all of these guardrails in place, right? But in the meantime, I mean, we just have to respect the rules that we've set forward in the meantime, right? So that while we can't machine check everything this second, and to be honest, I'm not talking about months of work here on these validation frameworks, right? But it's about putting in the ability for every team to contribute guardrails, right? Which right now it's a bit splintered, and so we need to bring this all back together. So I'm confident that for especially the errors we just talked about, right? Like releasing a piece of content that crashes every server on launch, or twice, right? Or evident misconfiguration of items or costs or recipes, right? I'm confident that that will solve the issue, that those issues will no longer occur as long as we respect the validation and nobody tripped them off, which, that's the next battle.
The validation issues.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we can eliminate that.
All right. So for the last 35, 40 minutes, we've been off the program here a little bit. The issue that went out, the issue that happened with 482 yesterday because of a validation issue, I didn't feel like we could go into the program that we had originally planned without addressing it. It was just, I was very frustrated, and sometimes I abuse my position here to do this. So you're laughing. I'm the one that's going to get back and see if my bosses are still happy with me or not. We do have a lot. We do have a lot to cover, a lot that we wanted to cover and stuff, and we're going to start getting into that stuff now. I hope watching you'll forgive the diversion, that you'll agree that it was worth it. I think there was some very useful stuff there, and I do want to. I do want to say, I have to say this. This is me personally saying this. He goes, it was an issue with a ship yesterday, but the ship teams around the world, there's a team here, there's a team in Austin, there's a team in Montreal, have been some of the consistently quality delivering teams of this project for years and years and years and years and years. It's easy. It's the last couple of weeks have been a bit rough, but it's like, where would we be? It's where would we be without the ship team? So it's like, lest this seems like we're coming down on the ship team today, that is not my intention. They happen to be in the hot seat, yesterday. It's like this, but this could literally happen to anybody.
Any team. Yeah.
And it did. It happened. It was a whole nother team 2 weeks ago. Sure. And if we don't get these guardrails in place, it'll be a whole nother team 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So I can't.
For me, the takeaway is human guardrails are not enough. That's the thing.
Yeah. I just didn't want it. It's unfair to make it seem. It's unfair to make it seem like the ship team hasn't been absolutely killing it for years and years, and they still are. So, desync. Let's just. Nobody's ever going to say yes to being on this show ever again. Benoit, I put you on the hook to write a big old write-up on desync, and I know it's being worked on. I've seen the draft and it's being worked on between every other initiative. Time spent writing is time spent not actually fixing things and making processes better. And
also, we got a couple guest stars in it that I'm hoping will make a difference too.
So that's still underway. That's still underway, and it's more like it's when we're done with it, it's going to be more like one of those. It's not a design brief. That's not the right thing, but kind of like what you saw with the gameplay guide. We're going to break it down, and I promise you, it'll be the most educated thing that you'll ever see from a game studio on what it is and what it isn't, and what causes it and what doesn't cause it, and stuff like that.
And the particularities of our game architecture.
Yeah.
Also.
But that said, when 4.8 went out, I started with 4.7. 4.7 was great overall, but there's a reason I had to call you and ask you. There's been this mounting desync for the last several patches. It starts out small and it gets bigger. It affects some people more disproportionately than others. There are people that I have talked to, whether at a Bar Citizen or just reading the chat here today or in any other show, where they're having a virtually unplayable experience. And then there are other people who are like, that's not my experience. I'm having, I'm having a wonderful time and whatnot. Without just reading the entire doc that we're doing, I can't get past this show without talking about it at least somewhat.
Yeah.
What do we know is causing it at this point? What are we doing to resolve it? Just a simple question.
Well, so what we know about right now is that there are some meshes. When I say meshes, I mean a dedicated game server inside a shard that are running way below FPS spec that we want, right? And so we don't have a handle just yet about what is actually causing it. We do have performance captures, and we're tracking at least 6 to 8 very specific optimizations that need to happen. One of them is within the area component, which is used all over the engine. Area and zone component, they kind of go in hand, but because we're pushing more content, right? The hierarchy trees of the game world is much bigger. So there's more areas, more zones, more subdivision, more. There are some areas of that where if you add a lot of entities in those that enter or exit these areas, there's, the engine provides listeners to track entities entering areas or leaving areas or zones changing, right? And obviously there's concurrency constructs around this to prevent one thread from accessing another thread, right? And so just keeping it simple without diving too much into the low level, which we will probably in some of our desync areas. But there's lock contention in the area component at the moment. In some places,
what was that phrase?
There's lock contention in some areas of the game. Well, I literally mean area, like, if there's many entities in this spot because of the way it's configured, we're seeing like basically FPS drops in those areas. And so we're tracking about, like I said, 6 to 8 major optimizations that we're trying to get in our hotfix channel, right, to try to get this FPS back up to the spec that we want, which is above 20, across
server FPS.
Server FPS, correct.
Somebody's going to take that clip and say, "Oh no, Star Citizen's only looking for 20 FPS in gameplay and whatnot."
No. And it's important to note that like when a server is running low FPS, it doesn't mean that it will create desync, but especially when you're interacting with entities that are simulated on that DGS, AI characters, NPCs, then you're going to perceive desync because the source is slow at creating its output, and the traffic goes from your game client to the replication node, replication node to game server. Now, if game server is running slow, at the beginning of the frame, he's taking the state from the game, from the network to the game and applying it. At the end of it, he's applying the changes back to the network, right? If that loop is slow, then your client's going to predict something, and then that prediction will get corrected the next frame, and that will create a rubber band, right? And so that's the gist of why there's desync in general.
Why does the client have to predict?
Because if he doesn't predict, then you're going to be at the tick of the server, and you'll see like
even if it was running perfect, you'd see it in an FPS, like because your need for it to be, so responsive is too high.
Is this so? All right. The meshes inside the shard are certain ones are slowing down.
Correct. It's not widespread in all areas.
Which is why some people are in there having a great.
I'm not going to tell you which areas. That's what you're asking.
Which do
I got to ask the obvious question. Then at least it's obvious. It seems obvious to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is this related to the ship cleanup or lack thereof?
That's one of those things that we're looking at, is how aggressive or not the ship cleanup is actually happening. That's one of the things we're looking at. Yes.
Because you can watch a Twitch stream or look at a issue council report, and you'll see. I want to say dozens and dozens, but I feel like it's even more.
Yeah.
Bricked ships everywhere because with the insurance changes and whatnot.
Sure.
Bricking these ships
Yeah.
and whatnot. Is this? It's Is this viably part of what it is? Is this?
In part, yeah, that for sure doesn't help because the more entities are replicated, the more the server needs to do every frame, and so that contributes to this. So yes,
You can usually find it when you look at a server that is performing great. It usually has a larger vehicle population, certainly.
The server
Vehicles
that is
are-
performing great has a larger.
No, a firm not performing so
Oh.
great tends to have a slightly larger vehicle population or a very large active population. That can also happen. In general, just a lot of everything. We're quite a heavy game, entity-wise. We
Right.
want to avoid getting to the sort of size that we were in Stanton before we went into meshing, right? Because that was consistently difficult to manage.
Yeah, but if we're okay, if we're already, Stezig is like, fix it. Super helpful, dude.
Oh man, it's so easy. We're done with this subject.
You know what, Stezig? I honestly, none of us had thought about that. That's all right. We don't even need to do the rest of the show, do we?
yeah, I know that there's been some changes related to how we perform entity cleanup. So unattended vehicle cleanup used to be a separate system, right, that ran on its own. That's been merged into what we call the density manager, which is basically an engine functionality that will look at overpopulation in clusters of areas that obviously designers have control over. For example, we want to make sure, like the exit routes for hangars are cleaned up, and so these are, have active cleanup zones configured, right? That's designer controlled. Now the engine will then after that apply the logic on the volume, determine, there's too many of X in this area, and we'll start popping stuff out, right? He's going to do the cleanup. Now for ships, the unattended vehicle cleanup system used to be separate. Now it's been brought into the density manager, I think end of last year, something like this. So it's been a while. And this one tracks whether there's passengers on player passengers on a vehicle, and will, based on a certain timer configuration, and the values are different depending on the areas, will either stow back the ship into the originating inventory or destroy it, depending on if it's a player-owned ship or if it's an AI ship, depending, right? Now, it does look like maybe there's a misconfiguration in key areas that are leaving ships there. So we don't think the system is incorrectly functioning. We think it might be inaccurately configured.
Okay.
In some areas, and so that would allow a very popular area to just accumulate ships like crazy, right? And so that's what we're looking at right now.
Are you able to clean up? Are you able to differentiate between? You obviously mentioned a ship that has a person on it. That's great, but a ship that doesn't have a person on it but is still a viable ship versus a destroyed husk versus a bricked ship from the inventory. You're able to distinguish between and set timers for.
I'm not sure if the density manager will have a modifier specifically for bricked or not, but it can see it.
It does, or it will.
It will.
Okay.
It will eventually.
Yeah, if it
doesn't, it will. Eventually.
And
it's less about timers. It's more about density. It's sort of trying to say you have overpopulated this area. So it's less about like that ship has been there for a long period of time. It's more like there's a lot of ships here.
Yeah.
Let's remove one. Let's figure out which one is best to remove. For unattended vehicle does have a timer as well. So you kind of have these like, it's sort of like we talked about validation. You start with a timer, then you start adding intensity, then you start sort of building up these views of the world to kind of understand which areas are problematic. Like, the entrance to a hangar, we have to be super strict.
Yeah. There's a place, as we're talking about this, something that pops in my mind that I think is also, in our process, now not even development process, but let's call it live operations of the game. We're very lean in terms of our live operations at CIG because we're in development, right? And so even though we do run a live service, we try to run a really lean ship, right, on that side. And so we don't have an army of site reliability engineers that are looking at like every aspect of like oh, Shard 25 is an overpopulation of ships at Jackson Swap in, between this time frame, time frame. Like we don't go in that depth, right? And so we track overpopulations across all shards, right? But we can't go granular into this. But that is an area where we could improve this and detect those things to better tune these values. Typically right now we will tune the density manager values every patch or every hotfix, but that is a slow cadence compared to how you would react if you see, oh my God, on every shard this location is loaded, let's affect the density manager change right now. Right now we don't have the ability to do that live, and that's a problem. That would improve the game quite a bit.
There's folks in the. It would. I don't want to dismiss that. There's folks in the chat that are like, just make the brick ships salvageable, or give towing missions stuff. Those are all.
They are salvageable, as far as I know.
Yeah, and the towing missions, but it's those are all game design and mission design stuff. That's not anything that the tech. And even then, a solution that requires entirely player, it relies on the players entirely to solve, is not going to get us where we need. I don't disagree, and I know it's the intention. They're supposed to be salvageable. If they're not, they will. Yes. They will be. It's just having towing missions to take them away and dump them somewhere is a great idea and stuff like that. But that can't be the only thing. There still needs to be a technical solution to clean this up. It's the reason I asked. The reason I asked if it could separate everything is because, I don't think all of them are salvageable. I'm trying to remember an old conversation right now where there were rules about why this one could be salvageable and this one couldn't be salvageable.
I know there's been changes related to this as well recently.
But like it's in my head, I'm just like, why don't we just disappear every brick ship right now until we get a handle on this? Like just crank the cleanup on bricked ships that we know don't belong to anybody. Just like they get to exist for 1.5 seconds and then they're gone. It's like there's.
I'm just imagining the Reddit post after that. My ship disappeared 1 second after.
A brick ship. No, but the ship only gets a bricked ship.
Bricked.
A bricked ship is they're back at their ASOP terminal and they've reclaimed it. So why can't it just vanish? Now I'm certain. Whenever I go off like this and whatnot, and it sounds so simple and it sounds so obvious, and then I get back to my desk and I've got an engineer or something comes and goes, "It's not that simple, Jared. There's this and that. There's that dependency and blah blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just a layman moron who had a very simple idea." But it's hard because it's I'm no different than half the people watching the show. It's just there are times when something seems so easy and so obvious. And it's like, just do that. Because that's what my head was screaming that whole time. That's where I was going. Sure. Just until we get a handle on it, destroy the brick ships right away.
I always say, if it was easy, it would have been done. So by that, you have to assume there is reasons that makes it not easy. And it's usually like the complexity in the interactions. Like Benoit talked about, you sell a gun, and then you deconstruct it, and then the material can be sold somewhere else for something else. These kind of complex interactions between lots of different systems are usually what stops us from doing something that from a tech point of view is literally a flag in the database that says that's bricked. I can treat it as garbage.
Yeah. There's this thing. It's what was the example? We had the example. I have to look back in our chat. There was something in the 481, it was the one of the old features for the hanger module, for the. It's in our chat. It's in our chat. Yeah, it's one of the issues, and I said, dude, we need to remember that. It's in our chat. When I said we need to bring that up. I can't remember. But recently, one of the things that flummoxed 481 was an old system from like 6 or 7 years ago that hadn't been touched. Some new piece of content touched for the first time, and and it didn't work, I can't remember. It's
Yeah.
just one of those. It's if making games were easy, they'd be done. I mean, pivot your. There wouldn't be a studio that closes every week in the last 2 years. So what did? So 4.8 comes out.
Yeah, there's been other issues. We talked about the catastrophic ones, but there's also other tangential issues.
We've got a section coming up where we've pulled the dashboard and what folks are working on. I'll get to that in a second if that's where you were going. I want to stay a little bit more into 4.8. So. Think of how I want to do this here. We put up a thread. We collected a bunch of questions. We pulled some of that. Some of that's affected. We've used that to inform certain of the topics here and stuff. When you go through, okay. If you had to put, I understand that nothing is simple. I understand that there's probably 14, 15, 16 underlying causes that all contribute to this. But if I ask the simple question, what changed in 4.8 that affected server performance so much? I'm just on like raw server performance.
Sure.
Whatever. What's the thing that comes to your head? I'm gonna get both of you on this
Sure.
here, so don't think you get out of this. It's try to make
for me it's behaviors. So there's one thing about running a game server is that it's kind of an organic behavioral system, right? And so you can have a game server with a version of the code, a version of the data running a certain way, and then players start doing something different. And that completely changes the performance profile. And so I feel like in 4.8, most likely my hunch for these 6 to 8 like performance issues that we're looking at, it's related to some imprint changes. So the way people use ships, leaving brick ships behind, are there more claims, than before? Are there other egregious issues that showed up that are creating more claims that would affect, the amount of entities on the server? Is there a malfunction on, for example, the density manager cleanup that is leaving items in place? Or is there just people are going to a location that's configured to be very loose on its density, and it's somehow the location that people have decided to go to in this patch? So sometimes the performance profile of the game servers changes just based on behaviors, not on like, we changed something.
You're blaming the backers.
No, I'm blaming the features that cause behavioral changes. And so that, for me, that's what screams. That's what comes out of it for me. You're talking raw server performance here.
Yeah, I'm not talking just the raw server performance here. What are you thinking, Jens?
I mean, it's hard not to just parrot what you just said. I mean, it does feel like when I think of 4.8, there's nothing there I can go, that those gameplay changes we made could have caused it. The only thing I can think of is we did performance improvements, but there is a large change in how we handle vehicles and the lifetime of vehicles.
You mean the changes with the imprinting and the insurance system? So the way that the life of a vehicle in the universe changed, both its lifespan with the braking and stuff like this, and the way that players handle them because of the changes that we instituted. Yes. I want to be clear. It's so you're bringing it back. You're bringing it back, a big chunk of it, not everything, back to the number of ships.
I mean, that would be based on what I know of that patch went out there. I just don't see I don't recall there being any larger changes on the gameplay side I feel like could explain it.
Yeah, we're not talking about their. I want to be real clear. It's you, folks watching. You have a lot of experience with me, and you have a lot of experience with Benoit. You know, less experience with Jens here. He's not saying that there are no bugs. There are no bugs. It's like we're talking about raw server FPS things. A bug does not impact server FPS. You know the freight elevator eating your cargo does not affect server FPS and stuff. The question I asked was what is affecting the raw server FPS, and that answer is they're trying to find an answer specifically to that. If it sounds like we don't know the answer, quite honestly, we're still working on it. It's somebody in the chat said it sounds like Jared's frustrated. Of course I'm frustrated. These two guys at the table are frustrated. Quite a lot of people are frustrated. I say it over and over again. We're having the same conversations you guys are having, just 3 weeks earlier. And it's like this. There's this concept that game development is game construction. You're just supposed to have all the answers, and you're supposed to know everything, and everything's supposed to be figured out before you do it and stuff. And just the reality is that's not how it works. I'm not talking about CIG here. I'm talking about the entire industry. I'm talking about how games come together. I'm talking about programming. Quite honestly, it's discovery. It's discovery as you go through it. We always figure it out. We always figure it out. Like I could sit here and just gush about the quality of the people that we have here. It's like, when I go to a Bar Citizen, people always ask me like, is it hard to go out and do this? What I'm doing right now. It's less than 12 hours after a patch went out and was totally borked and whatever, and you've got to go out live and put on a face for the project and whatnot. Is it hard to do that? After 318, I had to do the thing. After the freight elevators with Race for Stand, I had to do the thing and whatever. Is it hard to do that? And the answer is no, it's not hard because of the people here. I believe in the people here more than anything. It's when you get. I spend more time with the people who work here than across teams than most people. Everybody's working on their work. My work is the people. So it's. When I lose faith in the people here, that's when you'll stop seeing me. But it hasn't happened in 12 years. It's not going to happen anytime soon. I love the people here. And they're working on it. If they haven't figured it out yet, they will figure it out. So you've already got some tremendous
for sure.
leads.
And I think to be honest, like on server performance, the 6 to 8 issues we're looking at now are definitely the source of the problems.
Do you want to just enumerate what the 6 to 8 issues are? You mentioned it a couple times, and it's just why don't we just use this opportunity?
Of course. I can. Well, I don't want to deep dive into each of them because
just give me top level.
That's a bit intense if we go down that route. But there's navigation system dispatching of tile configuration changes on planets, which affects how AI use the nav mesh on planets. So there's a performance call out on that is costing us a chunk of frame in the servers. This is purely based on the servers we know are affected by this problem. There's
a lot of digging.
Yeah.
A lot of digging through a lot of data.
Yes.
To find the common culprit that are going to make a meaningful impact.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is like cross-linking a lot of things. There's this is a pet peeve of mine that I keep pushing on, and we're gonna definitely resolve that from a software point of view. But there's an entity spawner in some of the areas that are affected that are coming in and out of streaming and respawning their spawn set every time.
This is the NPCs that just go. It just spouts out.
And one example, I have multiple others related to this. That's one. The area component we talked about. So it's what we call register with external systems is a phase when the components are a component or an entity is coming online when it's streaming in. It needs to register with external systems. That's a notorious area that is an issue on multiple components. This one is from the area component. Is in that place a problem?
So the first two are NPC related.
Correct.
This one
Right.
is
This one is more engine and let's call it area configuration related. This one bleeds into the zone lock that we talked about earlier. So those are two, area and zone lock. So this is really tied to the amount of content in the game and the complexity of that content in some areas. Because we're also making more and more complex scenes.
Right.
You know, like space station and, you know, the content we've put out recently, whether it's TSG or Rockcracker or like, there's a lot more complex layouts in those elements that contribute a lot to this, and so those are part of that. The ship cleanup is another big one that we're looking at the moment, which is the source probably of the other two, which is the amount of registered entities that have either MFDs and or the flight system active.
entities that specifically have MFDs.
Yes.
So it's an excessive number of MFDs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why isn't MFD so?
Well, we don't know specifically. I bet that if I went into that area and I looked, there would be a bunch of MFDs that are somehow visible. So that's been these components have a visibility aspect to it, where if you look at it, it's going to replicate for you, but if you don't look at it, it doesn't. Might be a malfunction with that. We're not sure.
Right. So the ship is breaking, but the MFDs are still visible. And
Yeah, it
still...
could be like broken ship MFDs. You know, like we've seen weird things like, you know, everybody knows about the graveyard. There's been other graveyards in other areas, right? So there might be a new one we haven't found yet where there's somehow MFDs end up there, right?
So you have a couple AI NPC related
Yes.
things. NPCs and the way they interact with the surface of worlds, planets and moons.
Yeah.
NPC spawners, you know, these things that load out, load in, then respawn their entire their entire allotment of AI when they're already out there. So you got some NPC stuff. You got some location stuff. The locations are getting more complex, and the area system is not properly culling them.
Yeah, it's an optimization at this point. Like, the functionality is correct. It's just it's slow.
A lot of.
Yeah. A lot of it. Yeah.
And then there's the ship specific one,
Yeah,
the cleanup stuff, and then there's some raw entity stuff that we also suspect
Yes.
is related to the
And
ships because the
one-
ships have the most entities.
And one final one that is fire. So there's been some ships catch fire, and depending on the size of the voxel grid, we've seen the area physics properties of how the temperature system interacts with fire needs a big optimization, and it's costing us frame time. Where that's a combination thing, because internally we can't reproduce it, but we see the cost on some of the game servers that are running slow.
Okay. So these are the top 8
Yes.
ish kind of culprits to just
Optimization
raw
here, yeah.
server performance. We can optimize these 8 things. We should see
Big gains.
Big gains. I wasn't going to say big, but I'll let you say it. You know, see
gains,
big gains in server performance.
Yeah. Now
And-
the thing with everything with optimization, right? It's a fog of war, right? When you
You fix that. That's what was slowing it down. Then you find the next thing ends up.
you get rid of the elephant, and behind it is another one.
It's the 7-Up can that was slowing us down. You know, the Pepsi can would have been slowing us down the whole time, but the 7-Up was doing it first. So the Pepsi never got a chance to slow us down.
And
You
it's-
optimized 7-Up, and now Pepsi's like, my time is here. I can screw you over.
I can now be the one on top.
The choice of a new generation.
Yeah.
That's how old I am. Did you guys have that campaign here? A bunch of children. There's only one nodding head over there.
The same properties apply to crashes, right? Typically, when we do like stability checks on game servers, which, by the way, other than the 2 big issues that we've had, the baseline stability for 4.8, outside of these 2 events of the missing entity classes and the Idris problem, overall stability has been in a really good range overall, and so we've been happy about this. Other than now, the stats are terrible because of this, so we'll have to take a look. But the same properties apply to crashes. So when we look at top crashes, you're like, oh, we just have to fix this one. It's super high frequency. Then we fix it, and then, oh my God, there's 3 more. right? And so it's a fog of war. Optimization and crash stability are like fog of war activity where, yeah, you've got 7 now, you know what those are. We fix them. It might be the end of it. It might not be.
You can get clusters as well, and that's the same on the performance side. We might be looking very, very closely at the servers performing poorly, and we might be fixing things that help those, but that doesn't help at all to the other servers because they might be running into completely different issues. Like there might be something that's happening specifically on those servers that's unique to them that brings them to that low rate, whereas the rest of them don't benefit as much from that. So you always have to sort of look closely at the details and react to those, but proactively try to look at the big picture and sort of take you sort of where are we going overall. Once we fix that cluster there, how do we get all of it to sort of benefit from a smooth ride with zero desync?
Just a ray of sunshine, yeah.
Yes, that's it. I'm just
We want
bringing
smooth as
the
butter.
yeah. It's gonna be all plain sailing.
I wanted to touch on in my notes I've got, because there was other issues in 4.8 that, come from other optimizations that we've done and or other improvements that also contributed to some perception on the patch.
Okay.
So there's one thing that we're battling on the game side is that, we mentioned how we're transforming the game from one model to the MMO model, right? And that means scaling systems. When we say that, we really mean transforming those systems to be service powered, right? So instead of being all in the game server and it's all good, right? We transfer these things to be service powered, right?
So the server no longer has to run transit. The server no longer has to run.
In part, right? It could be transit, it could be other things, right? Like for example, missions had a part of the mission system needed to be pulled out of there to be able to have server meshed missions, for example, right? So there's a lot of work behind that to basically dissect some services and move them to some game systems and move them to services. Now, interacting from the game client with services that are on cloud infrastructure is kind of a different discipline than being a gameplay programmer doing a gameplay feature, right? Let's say I'm working on the main character, the actor in the actor team, like Jens, for example, and I'm doing a feature around that. But my world is kind of self-contained to the actor. If I'm also doing the replication side of this, which typically our gameplay programmers do both, but I know about the replication side of things, but that's the bubble. It doesn't exist, that bubble, right? When you talk about cloud infrastructure, cloud services that you need to invoke, service APIs to do something, whether it's inventory service, right? Whether it's reputation systems, whether it's friend service, social systems, whatever. That's a different type of programming that tends to always be based in what, for the layman's is asynchronous programming. So not all C++ gameplay programmers are well versed in the asynchronous aspects. More and more today, but it's still always a little bit of a jump. And so we've realized that there's a little bit of fragility in how some of our game systems interact with cloud services. So one of the particularities with this is that you need to design for things that can fail. That sounds horrible, but that's the way it is, right? When you visit a website and it's loading assets and one asset doesn't load, your browser is going to retry and you're not even going to see the difference, right? Now, the game in some areas, and I'm going to focus on the one I wanted to talk about today, which is inventory, is very fragile in its interactions with the backend systems. And so we had an issue in 4.8 that was, from a backend perspective, extremely minor. We're talking about 100 requests out of millions of requests every 2 minutes would have a problem, right? But the net effect, because that was affecting the inventory, is that people's inventory would get stuck. And so the effect on the game was completely magnified from what the backend team...
Because you can't do anything with your inventory, really.
Well, yeah, so the inventory has this issue, it's not an issue, it's a property where all of the moves that you do in your inventory need to be ordered. They need to be performed in order. And that requirement is extreme because you can't go, put this helmet on the head and then put this other helmet on the head and take this one back and stow it and then move the core armor. And then if the backend systems were completely asynchronous and do this in parallel, you would end up with like mixed results, And so
or we could not have prediction, which would be the other option. But then obviously we run into the problem that
Performance.
I put the helmet on my head and I'm waiting.
Yeah.
You're waiting
And
for
I'm
the server
waiting.
to catch up.
And I'm waiting.
Right.
You're waiting for the server to
While
catch
I'm doing that, I can't do anything else.
And so
Anytime, waiting for my helmet to show up.
and so this minor, like I said, from a backend perspective, 100,
100 times out of 2 million is what you said.
100 out of 2 million
Every 2 minutes.
every 2 minutes, right? Which was a heartbeat problem. Anyway, it's been fixed. But the net effect was that you're making moves on your inventory, and then one of the moves stays there to the possible maximum of the timeout, which is 8 minutes in this case. Which that's the problem.
It's a long time.
And so
In
now,
a game.
if you looked at, backers at this point that have been with us for a long time all run with some display info, and so they see the pending moves debug on the UI, and so they can see, there's a move that's stuck, right? And so that's how these things were stuck. If you were unlucky and you did a move in one of those 2 minute window, I say every 2 minutes, but it was really a 3 second small window. If you did a move in those 3 seconds, then your inventory was stuck for 8 minutes, which is crazy.
An eternity.
And so that I use that example first to explain it, because a lot of people ask the question, what's happening when this happens? That's what happened. Now we fixed that issue, obviously, so that no longer is the back end issue is no longer occurring, but we still have that weakness on the client.
Right.
So that's one thing we need to solve now is we've realized, Jens and I have had multiple conversations about this, but we've realized that there's a lot of areas in the game, whether it's freight elevators, whether it's inventory management, handling, and I'm not talking about the UI here. I'm talking about what's behind it when you do your moves. Like
The UI is where you get to see it,
Yeah.
but it's actually something underneath. Okay.
Yeah. These systems, we've identified a series of weaknesses in how either legacy systems were built because they were built before these services existed, and then asynchronous calls were tacked on in the middle to get something working. And so we started to develop a charter that we've started to analyze every game system with this charter, right? It's basically a very simple red, amber, green kind of tracking, right? Where we can look at one system, let's say we look at inventory management. We can ask all these questions, right? And with this, we will identify all the pitfalls that this system needs to resolve. So without having a bug report, I can just look at the code and go, you know what? This breaks this principle. I need to fix this principle, right? So one example of principle is player items are sacred, right? So if I have actions to do, for example, I need to turn in stuff for a mission, I will not delete the items, then progress the mission. I will progress the mission, and on success and confirmation, I will then delete. And then if the delete fails, I need to have compensating actions to move forward, right? So that's an example of like the analysis that we're doing. Asynchronous programming we talked about needs to be explicit for all paths. So we're evaluating all of that. There's multiple other areas in the charter, but that's one of the things we're putting in place to augment the interactions between game client server and services, so that when things go wrong, and they do, right? That's the nature of internet packets not being delivered, services not being available, cloud services being there or not, that there's no like irreparable breakage, and that the experience can still continue and be resilient.
Flip says, Jared looks exhausted. I'm not the one that was up till 4 o'clock in the morning fixing this thing. It's somebody, what was it earlier? Earlier was like, it's like, this is what happens. Where is it? One of our moderators nuked it, but Wrangle McDangle nuked comment says, this is what the community looks like when they start to realize the company they give their money to doesn't really care about them. sad. This is the CTO who was up until 4 o'clock this morning, bug fixing. Not just the directors and the programmers, and he had plenty of people with him and whatnot, but they're up to all hours of the night trying to get this stuff going and whatnot. And then they come here and they do this and whatnot. This is not people who don't care. But anyway, that was a comment about how tired I look. This is just how I look. It's the gray. There's more gray now, for some reason. But so this is interesting.
I want to touch on the charter, Jens.
I want to touch this thing that you said real quick.
Very quick.
Building. So the system was built for kind of perfection. It expects everything to work the way that it wants to, and because the system was built without the expectation of some level of failure, it ends up, when it gets some level of failure, it fails completely. So you actually get, so in a weird way, if you build something with the expectation of no failure, you end up with a lot of failure. Right. And if you build something with the expectation of a little bit of failure, you end up with less failure than you otherwise would, right. because it's more nimble, and it can adjust, and it's a self-healing, self-healing stuff. Yeah. There's this idea of, we don't plan for failure or whatever, and every time I hear something like that, we don't plan for failure or whatever, I'm just remembered of NASA. NASA in the 60s, like, these are people who plan for every kind of failure, and that's part of why they succeeded. Yes. So, what you're talking about just kind of reminded me of this interesting paradigm shift, or philosophical shift of creating for some level of failure so that we can be nimble and self-correcting, and then we end up having fewer things like what we're experiencing, where the whole thing just craps out for 8 minutes and stuff. It's an interesting philosophical switch.
I think Benoit is absolutely right as well with the challenges from a gameplay side. Certainly, if you come from a background of running things only on your local machine, it's so responsive, right? Whatever you do just comes back immediately, and suddenly you haven't. Yeah, exactly. And suddenly you have to work on these premises where your timeout might be 8 minutes later. It's a from a scale point of view.
That's an extreme example.
That's a very extreme example, and you go, how do you, and as well as much as you all, from my point of view as from the gameplay side, is obviously, I still want to always be super responsive to the player. So even if it's self-healing under the hood, you should still see everything you do have an immediate reaction in game. So that's why we always predict, and that's why sometimes things go wrong, but we accept that things will go wrong and we roll back. But we try to sort of be right more than we're wrong. So like you said, only be wrong a tiny bit of the time, not all the time.
So, I wanted to touch on the charter, without going into details, but just because people are asking, what are you doing about it, right? And I think that this kind of audit, where we can kind of leverage our programmers, not just to build the features, but because, gameplay programmers are going to be in their world when they're doing something. And so they're making the feature, they're trying to make it feel good, and then they're like, it works. That's the happy path, right? Now, let me unplug the internet, right? Let me, unplug the internet for 2 seconds and plug it back in, right? Or it's basically, on the online side, we call it chaos engineering, which is more like, let's kill processes and see what happens so that we can recover. On the game side, I think that we kind of need to bring this perspective to the table to every developer so that they can evaluate their own work against, basically a rag sheet of like, explain the longest async chain in this component, and does it have every path handled, and can it be retried, right? Well, just with that, I solved half the bugs that we can see in some of the systems that interact with cloud services specifically are the areas that are there. Now there's way more principles and stuff to look at in the area, but that's what we've been doing, is to basically like bring this so that it's not just the leaders that bring it, the sort of the hammer down of like, you need to do this way and this is what we do. It's more like bring it as a culture throughout the gameplay teams and the engineering teams.
We're going to get into our end game here and talk about we've been talking about a bunch of generalized stuff. We're actually going to get into literal bugs here in a bit and do a little pseudo bug smashers here for a little bit. Before we get to that, because that's our last part, and then we gotta go and whatnot. The conversation that you're seeing here today is the kind of thing that makes me still be here. There's this idea that happens often that any video game company is a monolith. That everybody that works for a video game company all thinks the same thing, all works the same way, all has the same level of experience and philosophies and stuff like that. And if there's anything, if you've watched we just looked at it the other day, it's like 1,600 videos that I've made for this place this time. If you watch all of those, the first thing you should know is it's not a monolith. It's, we're not a monolith. No studio is a monolith. There are people with different ideas and different philosophies and different aptitudes all working together to try to make this creative thing. You'll see 100 quotes online about how the creation of a video game is more miracle than anything else. That we take this time and show that we're not perfect. That we take this time and show that even after 14 years, 15 years, we're still learning. We're still developing. We're still changing the way that we work. We're still getting better at stuff. It's easy to weaponize that against us. Oh, well, they don't have any idea what they're doing, or I can't believe they're still figuring this out. This like this. Because I see the comments. I know there's those of you out here that will do that, and there's nothing that I'm going to say or do here today that will stop you from doing that. So do what you're going to do. But I love, and I think it's more honest, and I think it's more in line with what this project set out to do back in 2012, to sit here, to have these shows and have these moments and be like, yeah, we're working on it. We're figuring out, we're changing the way we work. We fell behind in this area. We have to change the way that we build things for an MMO as opposed to what we were doing before and stuff like this. I just always appreciate anytime somebody comes on this show and is willing to roll those dice. Because there will be people, there are already people in the chat now, there will be people on YouTube, there will be people on Reddit and like this who will take the things said here today and weaponize them. And that's fine, it happens. It's always going to happen, it'll never stop happening. But it doesn't stop you from coming here and being as candid as you are, and I really appreciate that. We really did meet at like 9 o'clock this morning and for 3 hours talked about everything. Like, were we still going to do this show? It's how do we do this without being as honest and as candid as we are and stuff like this. It's just, I was like, we just kind of do it. When you don't know what to do, usually I find the truth is the safest bet. Mm-hmm. So with that said, unless you have something you want to add, I want to get to the last kind of phase.
I got one more thing.
You got one more thing?
That was in my list that I just wanted to touch on, okay. Which is shard lock. Now,
no,
the fact that I'm bringing it
by
up
all means.
incredible.
What's shard lock, Benoit?
Yeah. Well, so I want to say first that shard lock is it's kind of a community word. We didn't come up with this actually, but the way we've architected Star Citizen, even though it's an MMO, we operate it from an ops side of things like a match-made game. Right? When you come in and you pick a shard or you shard hop to one of your friends, you're just getting one of the shards that's currently running, right? And the process of bringing your character and unstowing it into the shard and then allowing you to unstow items from your inventory down into the shard and putting it back up there and getting out of there, right? It's kind of our attempt at not applying a classic MMO setup, server setup to Star Citizen, where you would create your character on a server, which then needs to run at all times, that when it's low population, we need to consolidate, that you need to character transfer or character rename, and this typical kind of MMO grid system, right? It's a company desire to not do that pattern and to instead keep it fluid like it is now. So shard lock is a little bit of a price to pay for the rapid movement between shards. Your character will need to stay in the shard until the hybrid decides that you're properly disconnected, that you've been gone, or that you're coming back or not, and then move you back up. Now, in Forwright, we did run into some issues for some players. So there's a subset of players that ended up being shard lock. In this case, it was because of an infrastructure failure, a small knock-on from a change that we made to as part of imprint. But basically, these characters we track where you are with what we call the stow context. And so for the entities that we care about, because we don't care about every entity, your player entity is definitely one we care about, we track where it is in the game world using your stow context. So are you stowed in the global inventory, and in what inventory are you stowed? Or are you unstowed in a shard, and if so, in which shard? The problem that some characters ran into is that some players are not very patient with the system when they go back to the main menu. And so they would go back to main menu and see, oh, your character's still in the shard, right? Or they would kill the client. Sometimes they do that. Kill the client, come back in, and then, oh, your character's still in the shard. I'm shard locked. Character repair. Well, the character repair in that case is the one that would cause the problem, where now the player would never get stowed because the repair would try to repair your character. Anyway, there's a bug there that made it so that now your character cannot be stowed. And so these players were shard locked. Some others ran into another condition. It was a fairly small subset of players overall that got in that situation, but it took us a while to identify the root cause. That fix been deployed. But I just wanted to mention that shard lock in and of itself isn't a bad thing. It's what enables us to have the flexibility to bring you into another shard kind of transparently, but we need to wait for the process to finish on your current shard before we can move you up, right? Now we've put in place, we are in the process of putting in place active monitoring for players that get unstowed in shard and stay there for a long period of time so that we can attempt self-corrective actions if we run into that condition again, so that this way we don't need to chase the actual source. We can actually get some self-healing in place. But I just wanted to touch on what shard lock is and why it's kind of normal, and that it's better to be a little bit patient with it than to jump to character repair right away.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. That was...
Me neither. Sounds really good. It's not shard lock, unless we have to.
Yeah.
And if you shard lock, just wait for a bit and you'll be good.
Yeah. So much of what we've talked about today is essentially growing pains of this. At the end of 2024, the leadership of the project had a good, strong look at everything that we were doing and the direction that we had been going and stuff like that, and said, is this going to get us where we want to go? And it was decided, no, we're not going where we want to go. So we switched things up in January 2025. And, after Rich went on stage and said, this is the road to 1.0, we've been on this road. All of these major content drops, Stormbreaker to ASD to Rockcracker and stuff, these are all locations in the 1.0 story. They have content that you're playing now and everything, but these are all part of this larger roadmap of the major story of 1.0 that will come online with that, and the gameplay that's designed to take you through the 5-star systems and like that. We are actively building this 1.0 out in front of everybody and stuff, and we've made more progress in the last 18 months than we did probably in the 4 years prior to that. I'd see if I get in trouble for saying that, but it's what I believe.
Well, you always want to accelerate, so.
Yeah, well, it's just, and the results have spoken for themselves. There's this thing they don't really talk about in most much. It's concurrency and daily active users. Concurrency is how many people you have online at any given time, in a given time. And daily average users is how many individual people come in and interact with your game during the day. Normally these numbers are not revealed publicly. It's just if you go and you search for World of Warcraft DAU and whatnot or whatever, you're not going to find them. You're going to find a bunch of estimates and stuff. One of the things that we're discussing internally right now is actually exposing that. Because even we spent a lot of time talking about the problems in 4.8 and whatnot. And 4.8 had its share of stuff. Obviously, we don't need it. We literally just sat here and talked about it. But it also had some tremendous successes. The daily average users, for instance, I'm waiting for the numbers. I just sent the request. Thank you, Michael Smith. And whatnot. I just made him an accomplice.
That's it.
All right, if I get in trouble for doing this and whatever. So versus 2024 numbers. Let's just go by month here to show what this progress, because it's one thing for me to say that it's been the great 18 months and whatever, but if you don't have data to back it up, I'm just bullshitting. I'm just saying words. So here's the data. In January, 2024 versus 2026, saw a 30.1% increase in daily average users. 30.1% between what the number of users who were logging in and playing Star Citizen before and after this and as part of this last 18 months of stuff. In February, 2024 to 2026, 63.8% increase in daily average users and stuff like that. March, 50.2%. April, 59.8%. May's always a big month for us. It was a modest increase of 14%. Because May and November always draws everybody back and whatever. Never had a problem getting people in May and November. And then in June, which is when 4.8 and like this, 55.4% increase over 2024, a 25.1% over 2025 and whatnot. So it's been 25 and 25 over the last 2 Junes and whatever. The game is unequivocally going in the right direction. It's the amount of users we have, the amount of people that are engaged. This isn't new signups. These are people who are actively playing the game. Is increasing every day on average by 50%, which is a growth that Star Citizen has not had at any point like this. And I imagine some aspect of that has to affect all of these issues. Issues that were this big before become this big when all these people go in. But the reason those numbers are improving is because of the work that you're doing and Rich and Rick and Ian and all those guys are doing to make Star Citizen into the thing that it was always supposed to be. And we weren't going in the right direction like this for the last 18 months there, and it's proving out in the numbers and whatever. So it's my heart's, I don't know if you can hear my heartbeat right now. I'm way out over the ledge at this moment. I don't know. If we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about everything that was wrong and whatnot and stuff like this, I don't think it's fair without also saying that these guys out there, yeah, they've got some work to do. There's some bugs to fix. There's some performance optimizations that are needed, but they are killing it. You are killing it. And so the numbers speak for themselves. So thank you, and we'll see if I back next week for another show.
I mean, there are a lot more players, that's for sure.
There are a lot more players. There are so many more players now than there was a year ago. And it's just, I feel like that has to play, that has to say something about how successful we've been, even in spite of all this stuff, even in spite of my very clear frustrations.
Yeah.
Poor Seb and Lauren and whatnot. They got a message from me about an hour and a half before a show and says, "Strike the set. We're doing something different. We're not doing the show." It's like and they're just like, "What?" So thank you for allowing me. That said, before we go, I have a letter. I want to read, and then we're going to get into a thing. This is from the lead producer on Star Citizen. So this is the producers are at all levels. You know, you've seen directors. You don't see a lot of producers. You don't see a lot of producers on the shows and whatnot. Usually because they're too busy running around making sure everybody else is doing their work and like, I don't got time for you. We tried to get Phil here today for this and like this, and again, too busy going through and making sure everything. But he had a
say about me.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I'm also really busy.
You're almost never here, Jens. You're clearly very busy. Honestly, it's been a while that doesn't seem to have anything going on.
That's why he's up in the middle of the night.
I know. So I'm gonna read this letter from Phil, and we're gonna go into our last section here. Okay. So after the release of 4.8.0, we reassessed our bug prioritization process. We're into the bug phase of the show here. Instead of having priority determined by the development team and validated by QA, we handed over the selection, some elements of the selection and prioritization in certain categories of bugs to the player experience team. The player experience team is internally always pushing and advocating for issues that players are most impacted by. So this should, in theory, address a perceived disconnect between us as developers fixing a lot of issues and players feeling like little has improved. Now, that's not to say that the priorities in the past were detached from what players reported on Issue Council, Spectrum, or Reddit, but clearly, things weren't working as well as they could have been. With 4.9, we will work through a newly refined list of issues affecting instance hangars, freight elevators, quantum travel, star map, inventory, docking, exploits, login flow, and issues that falsely destroy your ships and more. On top of that, we're tracking a longer list of quality of life issues with new players report regularly. Many veterans know a lot of convoluted workarounds to some of these issues, but really, they shouldn't have to deal with those to begin with. And because we want to ensure Star Citizen is as new player friendly as it can be, we're tackling a wider range of common problems that impact this first hour or so of any session. So in addition to the things we're going to go on, there's a new effort about things that specifically affect the very first hour. There are about 80 issues remaining on our priority list. And while we will tackle a lot of them for 4.9, we want to avoid just playing whack-a-mole with some of those bugs. Fixing a lot of bugs is not the same thing as fixing the root causes behind the symptoms that appear as bugs. For instance, freight elevators have seen around 70 or 80 bug fixes this summer. But due to the reactive nature of that endeavor, players don't feel like it's nearly as stable or reliable as it should be. Now, freight elevators will have a lot of interactions with other systems will need to be made reliable, but they're a core gameplay mechanic and must be stable at all times. I misread that sentence, but I'm going to keep going. On the flip side, we had a similar situation with transit in 2024 and early 2025 where we fixed a lot of bugs that didn't seem to make a difference. We then invested that time into building better debugging tools and self-repair flows, that's the self-healing I mentioned before, and yielded a much more stable system, even though on paper, way fewer bugs were actually fixed. We want to repeat this methodical approach with other systems like freight elevators, hangars, and more. For that reason, we don't expect everything to be magically solved for 4.9.0, and I wouldn't read it if he did. We will continue this initiative beyond that into 4.10 and beyond, but we're more confident that in this new transit, the same approach that we use for transit, to bring these systems in line with the scale and complexity requirements that Star Citizen has in 2026. Now, what we're about to see, or what we're about to talk about, there's nothing to put on thing, is what people are working on today. Do you have your dashboard up?
I do.
You want to hold your dashboard up for this? Just hold it up for this camera right here. Stay on this camera. No, stay on this camera. There you go. Can you hold that? Hold your computer. No, that camera right there. It's closer.
A bit.
Can you see it?
Forward.
You see it? Oh, that doesn't really look like anything. It's exposed wrong. Okay, switch to that one. Switch to Benoit now. Benoit's closer camera. Benoit's camera. Benoit's camera. No, it's still overexposed.
Oh,
Right.
well.
Anyway, this is a dashboard of what people are working on today. So these particular bugs were prioritized in line with the player experience team. This is a new initiative inside the basically, as Philip said, not just what issue council says and what dev thinks, but we're actually adding a third kind of pillar in here, and that's, hey, the player experience team, like the community team, they're both involved in this. It's you are the ones who are seeing what they're anecdotally saying on Spectrum, on Reddit, on Twitch, on YouTube and stuff. Come in with that, atypical information, that anecdotal information, and so we can apply the issue council stuff with the developer stuff, with the anecdotal stuff, and find a new way to prioritize which bugs get fixed. So we're going to try this. We're going to see how it works, and to do more than just say, hey, we're going to do it in a way, we're going to go through and tell you what people are actively working on today, and then you can tell us whether we're on the right track. Benoit, what do you got?
Well, so yeah, I thought we would take a look at a couple of those. So I've got all the categories that you listed, and
Give me the category first so I can prime my
right, prime
into the
your
right
mind
area.
to the right segment. Okay, good. So hangers. I'm gonna start with hangers.
Oh, that's a tough start. Okay, yeah, I'm ready.
So now I'm gonna sort of pick the ones that I think are interesting in the list, right? In each segment. So we're gonna take a look at this. So
These aren't in any particular order. This is just
no.
This is just some of
they're
what people
they're
are
being
working
worked
on today,
yeah,
right now.
Exactly. So PU multi-locations, instance hangers, exterior hanger doors remain closed while interior hanger door opens. So that's when your hanger interior doors open, but the gateway outside is still locked out.
Yeah, so they belong to two different parts, right? You have
Yeah.
the exterior and you have the interior. The interior is yours. You can control that in your instance. The exterior needs to be synchronized with your interior door. So what most likely happens there is, for some reason, your interior thinks you've been given the right to this gateway, or you could have been given a right to a different gateway. And there's an exterior door opening somewhere to a nothing,
Yeah.
and your door is opening to a closed door.
Right.
So there's a few things that could happen there, and normally it's that sort of handshake between the exterior and the interior
Which
via
happens
the
by
notorious
the
ATC.
notorious ATC.
I see Jocksfin in chat says that's a rare issue to happen, but W if you fix it. It's rare for Jocksfin,
Right.
but we have the luxury of having logging for every single player in the game, and while you've been lucky enough that it's rare for you, it is not for many others.
But this one goes with his little brother, overlapping hangers. So player reposition when landing in hangar ATC given, but seen as trespassing in someone else's hangar results in being repositioned, which I think is sibling.
Yeah, definitely, because you're looking at a situation where you think your interior is being given a certain gateway. You're heading there,
Yeah.
but it's actually someone else's
Yeah.
casa. So you're like
Yeah. Not good.
correctly trespassing, but obviously incorrectly been told
The trespassing
that was
system,
yours.
rock solid. In this case. All right.
The trespassing system, it's like Johnny on the spot. Hey, you're in the wrong hangar, dude. But you're not supposed to be in the wrong hangar.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
And then the third trifecta in this segment, which if you put them all together, is players can get stuck at repositioning player indefinitely after getting impounded. Sorry. And so if you get impounded, there's a chance that the server will never complete the repositioning that's supposed to take you out of your hangar. Most likely in this case, one of our charter elements, which is that there's an asynchronous call, waiting for a callback that never happens. There should be a timeout so that it can be retried and complete.
Yeah.
In this case, it gets stuck there.
Well, it can also be validation. For some reason, someone has not given us the reposition position that were created are no longer in a valid position. Because I think one of the rules is you will not be repositioned until we know there's floor underneath you.
Right.
So until this floor,
And that's
Or
a
ground.
learning because I'm sure that we repositioned before without checking that. And
yes,
that led to some interesting ones.
yes, that was,
Corrosion on Twitch says, I entered my hangar last night and the entire hangar despawned and someone else came into the same hangar and I was EVA in space on the internal geometry of the station.
Sweet. That is definitely related to this.
Yep.
it sounds like his positioning position wasn't amazing
Right,
in that
yep.
case.
Yeah.
Also does disprove my floor,
Sure.
because he clearly did not have floor.
Right.
Okay.
This auto refreshes. Interesting. Okay. Maybe there's been progress.
Okay.
So next one is the one, my personal hangar pet peeve is retrieving vehicle while another occupies the hangar platform will cause the retrieved vehicle to instantly spawn and clip through the vehicle occupying the platform.
All right. So F's in chat if that's ever happened to you. You can keep doing what you're doing.
Okay. And so this is basically typically
That's what I thought. Thank you, chat.
this
Yeah, it's
typically
never happened to anyone. Interesting. That's good to know.
so typically this
Can't see
happens when you use the ASOP terminal outside of your hangar, and for some reason your hangar was stowed with a ship on the pad, which normally shouldn't happen, but in this case happens. And so there's a lot of missing checks here where basically we don't check if there's a vehicle there, and so it gets spawned into direct intersection, which is also very bad for the server because it cannot resolve that. And so one of those two ships is either gonna go. The dreaded pink destruction, if you remember that.
Well, there's still got F's in chat, so I'm going to say that was a high. That's been correctly identified as a high priority.
Yeah.
Right. What else you got? And again, in case you've nodded off after 2 hours here, we're going through the bugs that are actively being worked on today. Not like today, ethereally, like on June 18th. Right now, there are literally people on these things right now.
Player loses access to persistent hangar at primary residence. Is a classic one. My character is actually in this state right now.
Where is your hangar? Have you found it?
Area 18.
But is it actually still there?
Yes.
Or is it gone?
No, the hangar is actually there, but I
Ah.
never spawn in it in my case. But I think that's some. In the case of these, for most players I've discussed with, the hangar is actually either stowed in another inventory somewhere else for some reason. So that's the hunch so far. We'll see what the team actually comes up with, but that's one that we definitely want to solve. Now I've got more on the hangar side, but I figure in the interest of time, I would keep going with the other categories. We've got login flow related issues. So we talked a bit about shard lock. That's one of them. So basically being a bit more communicative about shard lock and no longer having shard lock at all for players that stay in the shard. 64,008 spawn resolution error. And his little brother, 64,006 disconnection. Again, resolve player location. I can speak to this one a little bit. This is typically a symptom. So if we fix this issue specifically, the display will change. But what actually happens is that when you connect to a game shard, the replication layer, so the hybrid that's in front of it, is going to coordinate bringing your character into the game world. But he doesn't know to start which of the 10 servers he's running your character should be on. And so he needs one of those servers to help resolve your location so that we can unstow you in the right area in the tree and then hand off authority to the server that's managing this region. The way this is done is that the replication layer will hand this work off to any of the game servers on the shard. Now, when we have Idrises blowing up servers left and right, there's a very high chance that the server this will be handed off to is dead or is in the process of dying and is rebooting. And so what happens in this case is that the player will get to the end of the context establisher task, the CETs, and he will get a 64,008 or 12 error. And so we need to make this a bit more robust on that side so that either we know which servers are alive completely, and so that if a server is doing a server reboot, we don't assign him a resolution task. That would be one thing. but also trying to streamline that, right, so that it's a bit more efficient.
Yes. If a server is dead, we shouldn't assign people to it.
Small one I wanted to touch on here was friends list showing 0 out of 1, right, instead of the player counts per shard. So we're rejigging this bit. It's going to come back. This is a temporary thing.
Is that a priority fix though? I mean, what is that?
In the login flow section, it is.
All right. Well,
It's been reported.
Sure, but it's part of this initiative.
Yes.
Part of this initiative is to make sure that people are on the most
Correct.
important stuff like this. Give me one for. Tell me that somebody's working on docking.
Correct. Let's talk about docking. The very first one,
Okay.
unable to dock using docking collars.
That is problematic, isn't it?
Correct.
Could argue that.
Yeah. We looked at this morning and it was actually resolved when we were talking. It is now reopened. So we're gonna have to dive into that. But basically, docking is a subject that's always coming back. And this patch has been also contributing to the overpopulation of ships because players would just, basically land on pads and leave the ships there, or, where there's no impound. And so that's a big issue. So first one is unable to dock using docking collars.
So I can quickly just go on. So when you say it's resolved and then reopens,
Yeah.
so what happens there is the developers, to the best of their abilities, found the issue. They've fixed the issue. They've tested the issue locally, then gone, it's solid.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to cause the error. I put a fix in. My fix has been validated. I've now resolved the issue. But obviously, in this case, what sounds like the feature is not working at all, clearly there is a situation that either they didn't predict or that doesn't happen on a local machine. Again, we talked about you don't have
It works on my machine, but the second it got up to network validation, it fell down.
That said, though, I will say that we have a very, very impressive setup for locally running what is a replica of what we play in live, which is amazing. It's an amazing system.
There's an entire pseudo live environment right here in the office.
We call it the CIG dev kits.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool.
But
yeah, unfortunately, in this case, clearly,
is there one or two more for docking?
Yeah. After manually docking a vehicle, there is a chance for the docking bridge to lose collision, causing the actor to start to EVA. Most likely close to another issue we've seen on the command module about managing physics skip lists, which is how we, elements we want to skip from collision in certain cases from a given perspective. Yeah, probably related.
Is this when you're trying to dock and it ends up just yeeting you out into space?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay,
So someone's
you don't want the docking collar to collide with your ship and cause lots of problems there, right? So there's a period in time when the two are trying to get together, and
it's just people just need to get good and stop.
They have to dock perfectly.
Cargo services will not respond to hails, making players unable to request cargo loading zone related to ATC and docking in this case. That's another one we're looking at.
Freight elevators?
Freight elevators, let's skip to that. So hauling missions have no cargo to pick up at the collect location. So this is basically when you get to your mission location and it's like, hey, pick up this Adenite from this location, and you get there and there's nothing to pick up. So
there's somebody on that right now.
Yes.
Again, everything we're talking about in this section has somebody actively assigned to it, working on it right now.
Yeah. That's a bridge between mission and freight elevator, which is interesting, which is, requires specific people in this case. Okay. Freight elevator is not working and displaying an overload error, preventing cargo pickup. Do you want to speak about this one? Because I think we talked about this to death.
Well, I think we talked about the overload error is one of those that's a little bit too generic. That can imply many different things. Similar to the ATC or the ASOP saying your ship is unknown.
Right.
Yeah. It becomes a bit of a catch-all, and
people pull up and it's like they pull up and it looks like it's like a small box or whatever, but they're getting an overload error. The system thinks the small box is a much bigger box, kind of thing.
And like Philip said in the letter you so eloquently read out, Obviously, we fixed tons and tons of bugs on freight
Oh, yeah.
elevators as part of a long-going initiative.
Yeah.
And we probably fixed lots of overload issues as part of that. But because overload is a catch-all, it will, you know,
Yeah.
unless you get
No,
more granularity.
this
you
will
know
be
what
affected
it
by
is.
people throwing the water bottles.
Oh,
down.
yeah.
I was
Well,
going to say,
that's-
yeah, because that was
can't
that
do
thing.
anything
That
about
was
it.
that thing a year ago when people would put the bottle on top
Yeah.
and just kill the entire.
Yeah. Well, it's a variation of that really, because the freight elevator looks at the volume, right, and will make sure that it's got stuff that you own in it and that there's no overload on it. So that's one of the things.
Yeah, it does have good cleanup to
Yeah.
the point where it was cleaning up
Well,
players recently.
See, that's an example where like there's another bug further down, which is you have a chance to lose your cargo by activating the freight elevator kiosk, which is basically a malfunction of that cleanup to
Yeah.
prevent the overload. So
Yeah.
you know that needs to be solved.
That I like you just casually mentioned the freight elevator eating cargo.
That's the worst.
That's.
But for me, that would be at the top.
I
Right?
mean-
because that goes against.
I mean, I don't need to be Wickelow's PR agent here, but the reason there's a reason for a lot of the bad sentiment about Wickelow is because the freight elevator
Yeah.
is eating the cargo.
Yes.
And you know, and it's easy to say, well, this is a Wickelow problem. It's not a Wickelow problem at all. Wickelow's a disembodied head and torso behind it.
You don't think it's this sleight of hand that he's going like, yeah, I'll have some of that.
and whatnot. It's this freight elevator issue. This is
Or maybe Wicklow runs a 000 graveyard and we didn't know about it.
well, Wickelow's secretly my boss, and he's the one that's threatening to fire me every time.
No, man, that is exceptionally frustrating.
Yes,
That
this violates the first
particular-
principle in the charter we're putting in place, which is
Yeah.
player items are sacred.
But that also highlights that in the same in the inventory, there's this fragility in the transition between the physical world and the virtual kind of UI world that a lot of the sort of inventory lives in. If sort of backend, a visualization of
Yes.
the backend, it's a virtual item in a
I mean,
way, and the physical item.
I don't want to spend. We're over our allotted time and stuff, and you literally have an airplane to catch to go back, but it's. I'm sorry. The freight elevator disappearing cargo thing is my
Yes.
major
Yes.
major thing. And again, when I do my simpleton's hat on it, it seems like it would just be. It's like, okay, like you got an order of operations. You've got to delete. Shouldn't the delete just be the absolute last? Shouldn't you just complete every other action that you're supposed to do? Your mission
Yes.
checking, blah blah blah, and then delete is at the end.
Yes.
It sounds like delete's just happening too early.
Yeah. Well, in this
that's
case,
like-
it's a function of the cleanup. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be the cleanup, right? And it's something added to prevent another issue now causing an issue
Gotcha.
that's worse than
Yeah.
what we were trying to prevent in the first place.
That
That
makes
we
more
come
sense.
back to
That makes more sense. Okay.
again what Philip said in his letter. This is one of the places where we want to go back and kind of go like, right. So it might mean that in short term you're not seeing like bing 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 lots of like individual fixes, but we're going to go like what's actually
Right.
at the very bottom
Root
of
cause
this.
analysis.
Where is it?
So it looks like it's an issue with Wicklow, but it's actually an issue with the freight elevator. That's actually an issue with the cleanup system.
Yeah, exactly. So
And
can
it's
we
just-
make the cleanup system?
So the cleanup system is
better?
giving the freight elevator a bad rep, and the freight elevator is giving Wicklow a bad rep. And
Yeah.
the issue is, okay.
Yeah, or maybe we can find a way that we don't need the cleanup at all.
Yeah.
All right.
Just one last one
maybe
on
like-
freight elevators
Sure.
before moving out is freight elevators being inoperable, going inoperable completely, which is still a thing, which
Yeah.
we've had multiple fixes for, but that's one that we definitely need to close out.
Okay.
Should I jump into QT and star
I was
map?
going to say, let's do QT and star map.
So quantum travel route resets after setting route. That's
It's annoying when the sat nav does that.
yeah,
That's
not good.
so. It's like. It's not exactly. I was about to say it's not game breaking. It is game breaking because you can't get to where you're going. That's pretty darn game breaking. But it ends up working after a second or a third or a fourth attempt and whatever. That's which is what I mean by the thought was it's not game breaking. But it's just one of those things. It just makes things look so bad. It's like
Yeah, it needs to be
it should
flawless.
just be.
Because that's again a traversal system, right? The star map becomes like the routing system, so
Yeah.
You know?
And I think again from gameplay point of view, I don't want to sound super apologetic or anything, but that routing is one of those that it's written for a few technology iterations ago now. So we got some interesting changing coming with one of the future.
It undermines.
It's really hype, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
little seemingly simple things like that, small things, not simple, small things like that just really erode confidence in anything. Like if I can't even plot where I want to go and you can't get me there, it's like, it's just so...
Also, the first one is it resets. Next is doesn't plot around obstacles. Next is while in station, destination on opposite side won't set route. Those are the main ones, I think. There's more obviously being worked on, but those are the main ones I wanted to call out. On QT, tunnel exit can be in the same system as entrance, where you basically go through the quantum jump successfly. Right? You're piloting it right. You're doing all the things right. You get to the end, and then you're back in stand-up. Obviously, that's not great. So we're looking into that at the moment.
I mean, forgive me for being blunt, hasn't some version of that bug existed since we added jump points in 4.0?
Yes.
Okay.
Different source cause though, I believe.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those things where you fix that cause, and then you fix 7-Up, and then Pepsi shows up, and you fix Pepsi, and then yeah. So it's
that's why coupled with this effort of prioritizing these issues, there's also the robustness evaluation we're doing across the board, right? Because it's not just about getting the bugs fixed and then they break again. It's about trying to change the culture behind how we fix them, and then sort of what we check in the periphery of the fix, right? So make sure it's root cause analysis and that it's not just a patch on top of another one, right? So that's quantum in general. I got more if you want to keep going.
Star Map. Oh, I guess that was Star Map.
That was Star Map and quantum.
We haven't said one word about exploits.
We haven't said one.
Okay,
word
well, we did. Technically, the part where you could buy the weapon or whatever item it was, and then you could break it down, and then you could sell the broken down materials for 4 times what.
But that's worse than an exploit. That's legal and legit in this case, because we put those prices in, right? So it's not an exploit in this case. But we are tracking several potential exploits that that range. We're not going to go into details into exploits because that's kind of an area that we won't too public about.
Yeah.
We don't want people to be using those exploits if they are confirmed or.
Yeah.
Well,
we benefit from those people not knowing we know what we know. It lets us track, it lets us learn more about it, it lets us find not just that cause of it, but that cause of it and that cause of it. When, it's very easy to be frustrated when you see an exploit go and continue. It's like, why the hell isn't CIG doing something about it? It's like, well, no, we are. We're baiting the hook. It's like if we smack this cause of it now, then we never get to see this one, and we never get to see this one. So there are reasons why we leave these things going for perhaps longer than some people would prefer, because it's how we find out how it's happening. It's how we find out who is doing it, and it's like this. So it's just that's one of those ones where I could see why it's frustrating, but it's actually the process working.
Yeah. So we're tracking exploits across different range of types of exploits, whether they're environment exploits or related to the economy exploits, or duping, or adjacent duping, or mission bypass, things like that. So we're tracing a bunch of those, and we're tracking. We have a great team doing this work, by the way, like that support the developers across with all our crazy questions about what, who, and when, and how. And so these guys are doing great supporting us. We did not talk about inventory. We kind of skimmed over it.
I don't know, we could do a whole hour on inventory. Go right ahead.
Yeah, but so items that are being worked on today, like you mentioned, so inventory becomes unavailable and contents of backpack station loot inventory is empty. So this player reporting, I've lost everything. Well, so from our findings so far, you haven't lost everything. It's really the inventory is not loading it for some reason, and it will come back. Some of the back-end modifications we've done recently are going to help on that front. When double-clicking an armor item in the inventory, and the adjacent armor item is also equipped, that's a regression in 4.8. And so that's a bit of an issue because, click a core armor and installs the helmet that's above. I know the team's working on that. The undersuit icon slot in the player inventory will be missing after being sent to Kletcher. I think that's by design. No, I'm joking. But yeah, that's an issue. So if you go to prison...
You saying criminals don't deserve
yeah,
undersuits?
there's no undersuits for criminals, but... No, I'm joking. So we got to fix that. What else are we looking at here? When opening the inventory and the player has a lot of items, it can be delayed opening it with no items available or missing icons. So icon rendering in the inventory has had a lot of work in 4.8 to speed up the rendering. We're still not where we want to be. Like, we've optimized the way the UI is actually rendering them, the way the actual panes is constructed. But now we need to really look at the RTT graphics side of this to make that super snappy. The goal is really, you press I, it's all there. There's no delay at all. And so we're not there yet, but we do want to get there. Now, this is even more pronounced on very large inventories at the moment. So,
yeah, and if the delay for whatever reason is because we haven't yet been able to populate your snapshot of your inventory, there should be an indicator.
yeah.
I think they just got lost in transits. I know the guys were talking about that.
Yeah.
Spinning icons.
Spinny icons, yeah, because the state needs to be displayed as well. That's the key.
Ideally, never happen. Of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the icons have been kind of questionable for years, but you're talking about the recent.
Yes.
The recent. It's a different problem with the icons than the issues we've had with the icons before.
Right.
It's not about the look, it's about the timings and getting them on screen.
On
like
screen
like Benoit wants them right
like
away.
that. There's one more that I want to call out on inventory, which is like there is the way it's written is item lost when equipped by mouse click, which is a bit crazy, but there's a case where items don't end up where you think they end up, and so people think they're lost. We don't have evidence that they're lost yet, but they don't go where you're supposed to go. Yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty sure that is actually the definition of lost.
Well, lost in.
I expect it to be in this place, but it's actually in some place else.
But no, normally it can be found again by doing it again, because where it goes is the same. So your next item will go to the same place, which will then replace that item and either send it back or put it into your hands when you realize this. This is again about going from the sort of virtual item to the physical item. We put it on you, but like hidden, and then you play out the performance of putting it into your hand from that state, rather than just popping it into your hand.
Yeah.
It's that fragility in the some more complex
scenario.
When you have multiple async systems, they have to go through lots of steps.
I didn't go through most of the first hour hardening that we're doing as well, but there's a lot of issues that are being tracked from the first hour of gameplay. Like basically, you're a new player, you come in, what's your first hour of gameplay? So this goes from ship combat behaviors, rubber banding. We talked about server performance here. That definitely is related. Turning off the power and back on the power on the selected starter ships doesn't also turn on the radar. These are things. These are a bit more less critical, but critical to the first hour of gameplay, right? So that gives you a bit of an idea.
All right. Somebody in the chat. When we were talking about exploits, it's like it would be easier if you told us what an exploit is and isn't, whatever. And I've been thinking about that. It happened like 5 minutes ago, and whatnot. It's sticking in my head, because it's like we can't give a list of exploits because that just draws a bunch of people to those exploits and makes the problem worse. Like that's just not something any online game does. And there's a long established history, predates CIG, why you can't do that. And I'm like, and then sometimes I'm known for being a little snarky.
Really?
Surprise. And so my brain was like, it's like if you get that little excited feeling in your stomach, like you're getting away with something that somebody would be upset with if they found out about it, that's probably a good indicator that it's an exploit. And if you don't have that, then I'm like, it's like my brother never had that, so I'm like, that's what I wanted to say. I'm like, no, my little brother never possessed that, so I'm like, well, that's not going to work either. So I don't know, guys. I don't know an effective way of explaining what is an exploit and what isn't an exploit. It's just try to utilize whatever judgment you have. If you don't know, ask a friend. Maybe it's like I said. I was all ready with that snarky answer, and then I remembered my own brother would never. Maybe is my brother a bad person? I don't think so.
Maybe he is.
Anyway, I'm way off the reservation there. So yeah, everybody, that's our show. I hope. I think about how I want to say this. We threw the old show away. We did a little bit of it here at the end. We did what you just saw was a little bit of what we had in the old show, and whatnot. So I apologize. I hope you don't mind us taking the opportunity to have this conversation with you. Again, this is part of our scheduled stuff. You were here. You're literally. It's no coincidence that you're over here and right now to do this. It's part of our scheduled stuff that we set out to do. Back at the beginning of 2025 and stuff. I really appreciate that we get to do this. I really appreciate that you guys take the time to do this. I appreciate that you all will sit through and listen to this. And I mean, I already said everything I need to say before. For those of you who choose not to weaponize it and choose to recognize that we are human beings who will make mistakes, but are on the whole are doing work that I'm incredibly proud of. I appreciate you. That's it for our show. I think we're back. I have no idea if we're back next week or whatnot, but after that, I will say all of this talk right now is meaningless without action. It is. We've been on this cadence. If you follow the cadence of patches this year, you should know that 4.9 is scheduled for the middle of July. It was the end of January and the end of March, and then in May we switched to the middle. The next one is June. It follows the same cadence as last year. We just had ones in the middle. So the cadence has been in place for 18 months now. The next patch is scheduled for the middle of July. I don't have specific answers for you yet, but I know there are conversations going on about whether that should happen or not. Whether 4.9 goes ahead as planned, but we remove content from it. Whether we keep the content in and we push that release back further to give it more time to address. The only thing I can confidently comment on right now is that the people in this room and the other big decision makers that are having this conversation right now do not want a repeat of what just happened. So through one method or another, whether it's removing content from 4.9 that we don't think is ready, or whether it's pushing 4.9 back until the content is, I don't know which direction we're going to take, but none of what we've talked about today is worth anything without meaningful action. So stay tuned to find out which direction that goes. Check in with your roadmap roundup, and I'm sure there'll be an announcement from the community team or whatever about which path we go. But that's it. That's our show. Thanks for watching. I'm Jared. That was Benoit. That was Jens. You had I think your mom was in chat, but Jens, there was at least one person here who was like totally in love with you and was like, they should be on the show every week and
All the
whatnot.
time.
So
I agree. You
So,
should be on the show
so,
every
so,
time.
so hi, Jens's mom, I'm assuming. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Thank you.